Hey everyone, I'm Jalen Taylor, the Expo Manager here at Pixelpop Festival 2020. I'm so happy to introduce our next session, Cozy Dev, creating low-stress games for a high-stress world, presented by Kells Tate. Kells is the co-founder of Peachy Games, making cute and low-stress and adorable games like Calico, which is one of our featured games in Pixelpop Festival this year. Enjoy.
Hi, my name is Kells Tate, and we're going to be going over Cozy Dev, creating low-stress games for a high-stress world. So first about me, my name is Kells. I'm a game developer currently making a game called Calico about magical girls and cat cafes. I am Pika Chaos on Twitter if you want to look me up. So first, kind of obvious, but it's a good place to start out. What makes a game low stress? So it might be obvious to think, but the absence of stressors. Elements that make the player feel frustrated, angry, or nervous, we obviously want to avoid. And we'll try to go over what those things are that make people feel frustrated, angry, or nervous in video games. The other thing is what I feel like a lot of people might forget is actually the inclusion of calmness, elements that help the player to feel happy, peaceful, and content. This is what goes with the cozy factor. So it's not just the absence of bad things, but you also want to give the player a reason to feel happy about playing your game. And you really want to ask yourself, why are players seeking out your game? And is your game fulfilling that role? So the first thing is avoiding design that causes stress in gameplay. So the first thing I want to go over is that actually challenge doesn't have to be stressful. There are a lot of challenging games that actually can calm you down because it's something to focus on and it gives you a sense of accomplishment. So it is really important to know how to put challenge in your game and limit the factors that make it frustrating. So avoid leaning on the frustrating features that can interrupt game flow. I think game flow is incredibly important when it comes to low stress. It allows you to not have to think much about what you're doing, but to feel that sense of accomplishment that you're finishing tasks that you're going through one by one. Things that can trip that up is requiring the player to wait to continue a mission or task, including after fail states. So a big thing is maybe you die and it takes you way too long to get back to the point where you were at, or maybe there's a cutscene that has to happen every single time. This can really cut into game flow and can make the player more stressed than they have to be about the fail states that they're going through. Requiring the player to leave a feature they enjoy for one they enjoy less. I think this is really important for games that have a lot of options, like sandbox games, and what I like to call my game is a dollhouse game. It gives the player a lot of options for what they want to play, which is really great, but it's not great if you give them a ton of options and then force them to play all those options. And I know it can be really disappointing when you make a game to have players maybe miss certain parts that you put lots and lots of effort into. But I say that if the player is enjoying themselves, then you're succeeding, even if they're only seeing 50% of your game. Let your players create their own experience. Add gameplay adjusting features to allow players to play at their own pace and their own ability to tailor the perfect amount of challenge for their needs. This means that they'll have a better time playing. And challenge for players is deeply personal. We can never really expect what is exactly the amount of challenging that a player wants, except for possibly minimum and maximum. So giving players the option to tweak that for themselves is really, really, really important in low stress games. So this is about avoiding design that causes stress in the concept. So in the art design or in the narrative, abrasive visual and auditory content is super important. Harsh sound, bright contrasting colors, annoying repetition. This is this can be really, really big in game design for low stress. It's also important in regular games, but especially here, you're trying to create a calming experience for your players. Harsh sounds and bright contrasting colors, you may think, like, oh, I really, really want a bright, like, pink and blue game, but actually toning that down a bit might be better. We started Calico off in the prototype phase, and it was really, really bright and loud with its colors, and then we realized it actually wasn't creating the sense of aesthetic that we wanted. It wasn't actually creating a sense of coziness. It was stressing players out to have these bright greens and these bright pinks clashing with each other. So it's really important to go over your color palette and make sure it's something that isn't incredibly harsh on your player's eyes, and even more so if it's calming. There are some really good color palettes that you can look up that invoke sense of fall or spring, and that can be really, really great. Annoying repetition is a big one. Look at your sound design, especially for this. Sometimes you think like, oh, when a person clicks this in their inventory, it should do this, but how many times is that person clicking that button? Probably a lot. So you want to make sure they're not having to hear that tone every single time they do that. Or maybe they're having to buy something from a store and they have to buy it one by one and it comes with a little cash sound. That can be really, really abrasive. And then the other thing is triggers. So sensitive content that sets up phobia or traumatic memory. This one's really difficult because phobias and trauma are different for everybody, but there are some main ones that you can look out for in your game that can really, really make sure that you don't alienate someone in the middle of the game. Especially if you're making possibly like a serious cozy game, a serious low stress game that you want to invoke complicated feelings in. I think the most important thing is letting your players know right up front in the marketing and in warnings that this is the experience that they're going to have and what content that they're going to run into. Even if you think it's a spoiler, I think it's incredibly important that you do that. And then also with phobias and trauma, sometimes you'll make a really, really cute game and you'll think to yourself, man, bees are really, really adorable, which is true. They are adorable, but they also scare a lot of people. So try to think, is this absolutely necessary for my game? And can I make a function that allows you to take that away if it's a common fear that people are scared of snakes or spiders or bees? Even if you're not scared of it, giving them an option to remove that from the game will allow yourself to have so many more players. And then the other ones are offensive representation and alienation due to lack of representation. So the first one is pretty obvious, but it can be really hard to do if you're not doing the right research. Make sure that, yes, while you want to represent people, representing them badly or offensively can be even worse. It can make people feel really, really horrible, which is not what you want to do in your low stress game. So really, really analyze what you have to do. You can pay people to help with that, which is really important because you're putting actual money in their hands. Never ask for never ask for free labor when you're looking for these resources. And then alienation due to lack of representation is not having somebody in there, not having people that somebody can identify with in your low stress, especially if it's an escape fantasy. If you have an escape fantasy that only is representing a couple people, then you can really only have those players feel like they're escaping. Player autonomy and design. So while you may think that choice is the best thing you can do and you just want to give your players a ton of choice, it can actually be really stressful to have too much choice. I know if you've ever gone to a shopping site and they don't have good enough sorting systems, it can be really, really overwhelming. So I think it's important that you give them ample choice, but also help them find what they want in all those choices. A good example is character creators because they show a very visual part of what are you requiring from your user. The character creator might not be a modeling system, but if you make the face so granular that someone can change a piece of cheek and a piece of the other cheek, then you're basically asking them to model a face, and not a lot of people can do that. And even if they could, sometimes they don't want to be doing that in their game, they just want to find someone that represents them. So I think what's really important with that is giving presets. And presets can be anything from giving all those options for that face, but also saying, hey, do you just want to pick a whole face and then a whole nother face? As a good example too is in this color wheel that I have in the middle, most people won't actually know where to pick a skin tone in there because unless you do that regularly, you don't know that it's actually a balance of grays and you have to go into the orange a little bit and the red. And how do you get it darker if you want a darker skin tone? Do you change the value or the hue or Like it can be really difficult for people. So what's better is to let them get that granular, but also give them the option of a full color range of skin tones. And when you're doing that, please remember to give diverse options for your presets, because if you're not giving those options, then people won't be able to represent themselves, and obviously that would be really awful. A good resource you can use is looking up inclusive foundation ranges, and it'll really show you the difference between an inclusive foundation range and a non-inclusive foundation range, and how it can look like sometimes you're including everything, but you're really not. So allow for both player freedom and professionally created presets, so everyone can have a good time. So you also want to be consistent with the players and the type of player that you're targeting here, because there are a lot of different types of people who are looking for a low stress game. Let's say there's someone who's really tired and someone who really can't concentrate at all, and they're just trying to calm down and they can't really think about anything. They might want something more like Animal Crossing, because it gives you options to just do nothing. There isn't really a clock except for the real world clock, but there's no, your crops won't die, things like that, except for turnips. But you really want to look at what type, because another type might be players who need a deep distraction, and they might look for something more like Stardew Valley, because Stardew Valley is actually really complicated. It involves a lot of planning and strategy, and it also allows you to have a feeling of success. So maybe it's someone who's trying to get their mind off the day, but they want to distract themselves by getting something that is actually complicated that they can get their mind into and they can sink it into. So you want to analyze every decision that you're making against the type of player that you want. You have to think to yourself, this thing that I'm trying to include in the game, is this actually helping the type of player that I'm targeting? Am I targeting a player who wants more challenge, or am I targeting a player who just wants something that they can keep flowing through? So we talked a lot about how giving users choice can be really, really great for their needs, and it can also be really, really great for accessibility. Different things stress out different people or limit their ability. There are some really obvious accessibility functions that you can put in your. I also think accessibility is about trusting your player. You can give them options like Evans Remains did to skip any section that they want and skip any part of the game. And I think you have to trust your players that if they want to play the game, they'll play the game. If they wanted to buy the game to skip through the entire game, I'm not sure that I would understand that, but that's what they want to do. And that's how they want to play your game. Um, so giving them options that lets them play the game like they want to play the game, trusts that the user knows what they want and how they want to play. Another one is a visual example. A Short Hike has a pixelation adjuster. So their game it's a really cute game, and part of the cuteness is this pixelation that they put on top of it. But that can be really abrasive to certain players. And they didn't want their game to only be for people who can take that amount of visual abrasion or who like that look. So giving them the option of turning that down is actually really, really good, because it means that they get more players who enjoy their game, and that's always great. And if you want more resources, you can check out accessible.games for a free accessibility resource that's well researched and really awesome. Thank you so much for watching my talk. If you have any questions, I can answer them, and you can look me up on Twitter or my game on Twitter. And also look up these people that I have on the final slide, because they helped me out with this presentation. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Kells, and thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to head over to our Pixelpop Festival Discord server at discord.gg/pxp to continue the conversation and participate in Q&A, as well as discussions in our Q&A breakout rooms. Stay tuned for our next batch of featured games, including Kells' own Calico, plus a live Q&A for Homing by Michelle Lega. Thank you.